What's your childhood mystery that you finally solved years later? Did you know that the brown part of bread is not different from the rest of the bread, and it contains the same nutrients? It is just the more cooked outer layer, and it does not affect the bread's nutritional value. When I was a kid, my brother lied to me that the crust would make my hair curly, so I would eat it. When I was young, I was also told a similar story that the crust would make my hair curly. It was so funny, and I believed it for a long time. It was one of the things that made me enjoy eating crust. When I was 6 years old, I had a strange and humorous memory of an old man who would come to visit and crack jokes with us kids. The old man would often spit his dentures into his food, which I found hilarious. I even knew the man's name was Frank. Years later, I mentioned this funny memory to my grandmother, who revealed that the person I was remembering was actually my great-grandfather. The day in question was not just any regular day, but the day of my great-grandmother's funeral. This revelation left me feeling a mix of emotions, including surprise, confusion, and a little bit of embarrassment. I realized that what he thought was just a funny memory was actually tied to a significant family event. I can totally relate to that. My great-grandfather was a prankster as well. He had 4 granddaughters, and he would put on his wife's dress and walk out to the lake, saying "Hi boys" as he passed by us, then walk off the dock into the lake. It was so hilarious, and we all loved it. It is not the biggest mystery, but one day, my friend came over to my house, and we were playing video games. My mom called us over to her room to help flip the mattress over, which we did. Later, we went to another friend's house, and my mom called that friend, asking if they had taken the 2 $20 bills on the dresser, but they denied it. 5 minutes later, my friend said we could go to the toy store because he had $40 and 2 $20 bills. I said yes, and we went, and he bought me a yo-yo or something. It took me years to finally realize that my friend had stolen the money. This experience highlights the complex nature of friendships and the challenges of navigating ethical dilemmas as children. It's possible that your friend didn't fully understand the consequences of his action and may have felt pressured to steal the money for some reason. I remember when I was a kid and a friend stole a Pokémon card from me and I caught him in the act. I never hung out with him again. It was so awkward when I ended up working at the same place as his mom. When I lived in my childhood home, Christmas was always a magical time of year. One of the most exciting things was waiting to see what presents I would receive from my parents. My mom used to hide my presents in a secret hiding place, which added to the excitement and mystery of the holiday season. I always imagined that the hiding place must have been somewhere really cool and interesting, like a hidden room or a secret compartment in the house. When I matured and eventually moved out, I always wondered where the secret hiding place was. I even asked my mom about it a few times, but she always kept it a mystery. However, a few months ago, my mom finally revealed the truth. The secret hiding place was actually the Christmas tree box in a cabinet in the garage. My mom would replace the Christmas tree with my presents when she put the tree up. Although the reality of the secret hiding place was a bit anticlimactic compared to what I had imagined, I still feel fondness for the memory. It was a reminder of the joy and excitement of childhood, and of the magic of the holiday season. Now, every time I see a Christmas tree box, I'm reminded of those special memories and of the love that my mom put into making Christmas a magical time for me. I can understand how you feel. My mom hid my Christmas presents in my closet, and I never found them. I felt so dumb for not figuring it out. My grandma makes the best key lime pie. She used to make it for holidays, and I loved it as a kid. As an adult during quarantine, I decided to learn to make it myself, so I bought the recommended ingredients, including a specific brand of key lime juice. I finally asked her for the recipe, and she asked if I had bought the right brand of juice because it was the recipe on the bottle. The pie was delicious, but it ruined the family recipe magic I was ready for. I remember my great-grandmother's banana bread recipe had a secret ingredient that no one could figure out until after she passed away. It turned out to be a small amount of espresso powder, which added a really nice depth of flavor. As a young child, I came across a peculiar TV show set in the Middle Ages. A distraught young woman dressed in an elegant gown was weeping while being consoled by her parents. She walked through rows of church pews facing the opposite direction of the altar, and as she reached the front, her sobbing was suddenly silenced by a loud thud. Blood splattered onto the backs of the congregation members, but they remained unresponsive. The scene continued, with a narrator describing the events that led to a hooded executioner chopping off the woman's head, which inexplicably floated away on the top of a fish. Years later, I tried to find the source of the TV show by asking around on the internet. To my surprise, it turned out to be a sketch from Saturday Night Live. This experience reminded me of the time when I was terrified by a Monty Python skit about a man-eating house in a black and white cutout animation style. I used to have nightmares about encountering such a house, but when I watched it again as an adult, I found it to be amusingly absurd. When I was 7 years old, my mom and her friend organized a meeting with St. Nicholas on December 6th for me and my friend. It was usually done in a public place like school, but this time it was in the friend's living room, just for the two of us. St. Nicholas entered and immediately started calling us by our names and talking about our latest accomplishments in school. It was mortifying and felt like a nightmare. There was this giant man with a deep voice addressing me, and it felt like stranger danger had come to life. We never repeated meeting St. Nicholas, and for years, I felt shivers down my spine just thinking about meeting him. It wasn't until I was around 25 that I remembered this traumatic experience and asked my mom who this person was. She was shocked that I never realized that it was a good friend of hers who visited our home at least once a week over many years. He often talked to me about my life in school, and he knew me since I was a toddler. That explained why he knew so many little details about me, and it only took me a decade and a half to solve. Wow, what a wild experience. It's amazing how things that seem scary or traumatic when we're young can turn out to be completely harmless. I remember being terrified of the dark as a kid, and it wasn't until I was older that I realized it was just my imagination running wild. When I was a child, I often spent summers with my grandparents in the countryside. During those visits, my grandmother would sometimes let me play in the water sprinkler. My grandmother would tell me that the water was free that month, but since I didn't know much about bills or water at that age, I didn't question it. But when I grew older, I came to realize that my grandparents had well water and didn't have to pay for it. Therefore, my grandmother was likely just making an excuse to avoid using the hose. However, I do recall a few times when the well was a bit dry, which may have caused some concerns. Reflecting on these childhood memories, I feel a sense of nostalgia and warmth for those summer days spent playing in the sprinkler with my grandmother. I can totally relate to this. I remember when I used to visit my grandfather, and I would ask him if we could spend his jar of change because it was raining. He always referred to it as his rainy day fund, and I thought it was so cool. When I was in preschool, I had a particular music experience that stayed with me for years. During nap time, my teacher would play a mysterious sounding music that I found incredibly beautiful. Even though I was exhausted, I would stay awake to listen to the music. The music was so enthralling and enchanting that I was left with a lasting impression of it. As I grew older, I still held on to the memories of that music. In college, I decided to explore composers who used synthesizers in their music, including Philip Glass. My interest in the music only intensified after college, and I continued searching for it. Years later, while watching the trailer for the movie Gentleman Broncos, I suddenly heard the music that I had been searching for all along. I was ecstatic and immediately found the album, purchasing it without any hesitation. To this day, I still listen to that same album, which evokes a sense of nostalgia and fond memories of the past. Wow, that's amazing. I actually remember my cousin having that cassette tape as a kid. Recently, I rediscovered it and listened to it on Apple Music. Celestial Sadapop is such a beautiful song. As a child, I would eagerly await the delicious aroma of pierogies wafting through the house. My mother would spend hours preparing them, carefully rolling out the dough and filling it with potatoes and cheese. But the real secret to their mouth-watering flavor was the diced bacon that she would add to the mixture. When I turned 20, I started to notice that there was a subtle onion flavor that accompanied the bacon. I assumed it was just the way my mom cooked the bacon, and I never really questioned it. However, when I moved out of my childhood home and attempted to make pierogies myself, I realized that my assumption was incorrect. My mother had been dicing onions along with the bacon and cooking them together, creating a delectable mixture that had been right in front of me all along. I felt a sense of foolishness for not recognizing this earlier, but at the same time, it brought back fond memories of my childhood and the comforting, delicious meals that my mother had lovingly prepared for me. I can totally relate to this. I remember telling my mom that I didn't like onions, and she snapped at me saying that she had been putting them in everything I've ever eaten. I guess I just didn't realize it because I actually like onions now. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos.